Hello and welcome to another episode of the Chorus Podcast. Here's a question for all the audience listening to the podcast. What is the most important part of a sojourn for you? Is it the food? Is it the sightseeing? Or is it the shopping? Well, undeniably, the accommodation makes a huge difference in the quality and the overall impression of a trip. And over the last few years, the spotlight has been scrutinizing the hoteliers to adopt more sustainable practices among staff and guests alike, such as reducing single-use amenities, reducing water and electricity wastage, and so on. Well, here to share more about leading the efforts to promote sustainability in the hotel industry is Ben Liao. Hello, Ben. How are you today?
Hello, Jihang. Thank you for having me today.
You're welcome. We are also very excited to have you to share more about sustainability in the hotel industry. But before we move on to that, could you please share a little bit about yourself to our audience?
Sure. Well, my name is Benjamin Liao. I come from Taipei, Taiwan. I'm current chairman of Forte Hotels and also a board director at the Howard Plaza Hotels. I've been in the hotel business for quite a while, but I actually started off in architecture. And I'm also an active member of PATA, a previous executive board member, and also the hospitality committee chair.
Thank you for your short introduction. Before we dive right into the topic of sustainability, I just wanted to go all the way back when you were a child, right? You come from a family of legacy hoteliers in Taiwan. So what was the concept of sustainability when you were growing up?
Well, I guess simply put, sustainability is grandma reheating rice that you didn't finish before. It wasn't something that was bandied about then, sustainability. But instead, it was just about long-term planning. And my grandfather, being a landowner and also a developer and construction, he was used to thinking in long-term, about 50 plus years. So it would impact the environment and also the community in some way. And being responsible, he would be concerned about what we today may call sustainability.
So you can probably say that your grandfather paved the way for the family to adopt more sustainable practices.
Yes, I guess. I mean, I think everyone was very thrifty back then. And from there, this concern developed into a part of the business.
And so, what else happened from your grandfather? What did your father do in the family line of sustainable practices?
Well, so after my grandfather decided to go into hotels, my father was trained and started from the bottom. He was very active in human resources. So he was very concerned with the development and training of people in hospitality. And as tourism became a large part of the industry, a large part of the economy in Taiwan, he was very active as well in helping the government in consulting and learning about what will be the new standards of what is today's hospitality. And within this, how do you treat your employees, and also how do you maintain this job talent pool as well was always very important. With me, I started off in architecture. Sustainable architecture was one of the courses I took with a teacher named Joel Towers. This was back in Columbia University. And for one of my studio projects, I had to analyze how much waste was produced in Manhattan Island and how that would affect the society, and how you could try to use that as a register in your architecture design of a building or urban planning as well.
So now that you are the chairman of Forte Hotel Group, how has your idea and your endeavor towards sustainability evolved?
Well, coming from architecture, so I was at first very concerned about sustainable materials. But as I moved along, going a little bit beyond design and towards more hotel management, I was more concerned about the processes that was happening inside the hotel. So, for example, hotels have a lot of plastic water bottles. There's a lot of cosmetics, the soaps and shampoos in little plastic containers as well. How do you work that as part of the building, part of the use of the building, and keeping track of that? And how do you try to reduce the amount of plastic being used? That was something that I started to use my sustainable architecture within a hotel. So, for example, in the Orange Hotel Ximen, we started to be more concerned about the plastic containers for water and as well as for cosmetics. In terms of water, we tried this different thing in which we try to change the way people look at the water bottles. You could use them again, or you actually have another water pitcher next to it. You have a choice. It's very important for the customer to have choices. We don't want to be too didactic and tell them that you have to be more concerned about the environment. So instead, they can take the water pitcher and then go downstairs and then refill at the water fountain and use that instead of the plastic water bottles.
That's a great point actually, because we all know, when you go into hotels, there's always a lot of plastic bottles filled up with water for the guests to enjoy. But it's quite an interesting idea to have a water pitcher so that you could refill your water, and it's also good to walk a bit around when you're in your accommodation, right?
Yes, and it's funny because like we were just talking about my grandfather. These are not really new ideas. Back in the day, in my grandfather's office, you would have pitchers full of tea. You wouldn't have plastic water bottles. So in some ways, looking back into the earlier generations, they sometimes were already doing sustainability in that sense. That was just the way things were done. And it's good to be reminded and to look into your history to see of certain. We want to think that's innovation, but it's really just rehashing some new ideas again for our current market.
So Ben, you were mentioning that you have lots of experience as a hotelier. So do you think you have done enough, and what could hotels in general globally do more to promote sustainability?
Well, first of all, I have to say everyone has a very hard time. And I don't really want to be shaming other hoteliers. So I'll start off with just talking about myself and also our failures. In an early start, we started to work with Cradle-to-Cradle. And we started like the plastic water bottle and water pitcher solution. But it's something that continues to plague us. Very simply put, like just the other day, I went to look through the employee trash, and you can see that it's very difficult to be sorting it. Every once in a while, it would just slowly go back to normal, but people's usual practices. It's very hard to really maintain that conviction and sustainability. And it's something that you have to continually remind your staff. There are, some accolades that we would get, but like for example, I think you will talk about it later. The bronze award from STI, it's thanking you for trying, but it's not enough to just do it one year, and you want to continually do it every year. But there are bad times and good times, and in fact, right now in COVID, it's very difficult to really keep that focus, especially when business is terrible.
So you were mentioning earlier about the fact that you were architecturally trained, and so therefore I will assume that you have a keen eye for designing your hotels with utility, for comfort, and with conservation in mind, right? So how do you think that has helped you to manage your current portfolio of hotels, and also in building and developing more hotels?
Well, my architecture training, it gives me a good understanding of the built environment and a kind of a sense of time of how the building will also age and how it's used through the time uh, by different people, be it the hotel guests or by the hotel staff. I I find that with my understanding, I could make it easier for the management. And whatever streamlining of the processes, it could be about efficiency, but then it could also be about its impact on the environment as well, on the society and how it will be playing a certain role for the whole tourism city, for example. And I like to find my inspiration in my travels. I think a lot of people enjoy looking at hotels, looking at different environments to live in. Likewise, I do, but perhaps I spend more time with the architectural details and also the processes. I also love to read about it and also continue to go to different design and sustainability or like business conventions. And just generally from talking with people that I meet while I travel.
So that those are some sources of your inspiration for your next hotel development, right?
Yes, definitely. Right now, so many things are changing. So it's very important to keep up with the times and just to get as much know how from all your friends, all the experts that right now we can only do podcasts or we can only connect on Zoom. But it's something that you have to always remain connected to your community.
So Ben, you were mentioning about your achievements at the Orange Hotel Ximen, and it was being shortlisted for the Asian Hospitality Design Awards, and it was also awarded with the bronze level by the Sustainable Travel International. Could you tell us a bit more about these accolades?
Sure. Well, first of all, our Orange Hotels is a three-star brand, which we started in about 2007. When we won the AHDA awards, it was a very big surprise. It was a long shot because we were really running against many five-star properties. But I guess they really enjoyed our idea of a minimal hotel room. So let me go a little bit more into that and also how it has to do with sustainability.
Yeah, sure. Tell us more.
So it was very much about asking one simple question of what is enough in a hotel room. We did like a little bit of research into dormitories and also New York apartments, Japanese capsule hotels, and Norwegian cabins in the woods. And we came down with five major elements. One was about the window, and another was about a large bed. And a third item was a comfortable bathroom. The fourth one was a enough space for your suitcases. And finally, the fifth one was about having enough space for you to move around in. So let me just take you a little bit into my favorite one about the window.
Yes, you were talking to me a bit about how the television is actually a new window to our lifestyle. Please share more about it.
Okay, so yes, well, it goes back to my architecture days in which the window with a French doors, for example, brings in the horizon, right? And you have horizontal windows, which is more international, which brings in the whole world around. But talking about windows here in the hotel, we on one side we want to have passive ventilation, but it also brings you a connection to the rest of the world. And in a virtual sense, a TV is like a window. It's showing the rest of the world as well, all the information, the weather from different countries, and so forth. Paintings are an older version in which they might be a landscape that the artist wants to share with you. But these were all windows, something to entertain you in a way and also keep you connected while you're in a hotel room. And that was very important to be satisfied in a hotel room. And that's what we wanted to work on when we were doing the Orange Ximen project.
Yeah, and you were also mentioning about the breakfast part of the hotel that it kind of goes along with the minimalist concept of the Orange Hotel. Could you share more about that?
And I'd love to. We called that the milk and toast. The idea came from traveling and also about how much we can spend in a 3-star hotel. With a hotel room that's only about 100 US dollars or less, you really don't have much of a budget in terms of making one of those famous in Asia, like banquet style breakfasts with 4 or 5 different stations. It just doesn't work in a 3-star. If you have to push it, then, well, I don't want to talk too much about it, but then the food cost means that the food quality is not the best. So instead of going in that direction with the Orange, we decided to just focus on milk and toast. And this goes back to travel, right? When you're traveling, and especially when you're staying at 3-star hotels, you don't really travel to the hotel to eat their breakfast. You want to go out and explore the world, the night markets, the Michelin star restaurants, whatnot. But the hotel breakfast, not so important. But it has to be there, just in case, especially if you have an upset stomach.
And what about the amenities? What about the single-use amenities? How did you manage to circumvent it in the Orange Hotel?
Okay, so in the Orange Hotel amenities, what we did was like we were using these plastic wrappers originally. Well, we wanted to be more environmental, so we started using paper. But the problem was like if you put the amenities in the bathroom, and there might be the toothbrush, the comb, the toothpaste, different other items, which were all in paper, meaning that if someone just splashed some water on it, then it was wasted, even if it was not opened. So instead of keeping them in the room, in the bathroom, we started putting them in baskets at the front desk. So we also then created an opportunity for the front desk to be talking more with the guests and being more concerned by asking them, oh, on your trip, did you remember to bring your own toothbrush? If you don't, we have one here for you. And then we also had a different upgrade in which we could give you an environmentally friendly toothbrush as well, or environmentally friendly organic toothpaste with a fresh minty smell from a local source. So it was a great opportunity, but at the same time, it was also very sustainable.
Yeah, I love it because I guess when you give your guest a choice and you give them the obvious choice of adopting the more sustainable choice, right? They will definitely take to use it. And that's not one thing that I love about your story. Another one is also the fact that you have referenced the cradle-to-cradle model in your hotel development, which suggests a circular economy and which traditionally hotel development has been referenced for mass production of consumer products, as you were mentioning earlier. So could you tell the audience a bit about how you managed to reference the cradle-to-cradle model in your hotel development?
Well, it starts off with design again. So it was back in 2011 when I met Michael Brongard, one of the co-founders of Cradle-to-Cradle. I think it was hospitality design in Kuala Lumpur. And he introduced this environmentally friendly idea that was fitting with hospitality. I always had a hard time with sustainability and hospitality because you don't tell your guests to take shorter showers or to turn off their air conditioning at 3 a.m. in the morning. It's not something that makes people comfortable. But with Cradle to Cradle, it was an opportunity to think about a hotel which the more guests you had, the more environmentally friendly you were. Now, that is a very great concept, but very hard to do, especially because the market is not truly ready for it. But working with him, it was very inspirational, and I really liked his convictions about it. but also at the same time, how he was very tolerant that it's very, very difficult to do. And from there, it became about encouragement. No matter how many good environmentally hotels are made in the world, they're never going to be enough. And it's always going to be very tough to do business. So it's great to have this community of people that are thinking that way, of people that are trying. And it's so important that we encourage each other.
So what were some of the things that you tried in implementing in your hotels based on this cradle-to-cradle model?
Well, the water pitcher idea was one that we worked on together, and also about the amenities as well. There was a third one about coffee grinding, which didn't work out, but it's fun and it's also very good to explain the situation. So what we wanted to do was to have a revolving door to the hotel, but this revolving door would be human powered. And when you went through the revolving door, you would actually be grinding coffee, which would then be served at the cafe. So the more customers you had, the more coffee you had to give to your customers.
That's a very interesting concept, but I'm so sorry to hear that it did not work out. But in fact, if that happens, it will be quite cool. This is a shout out to the other hoteliers if they want to try it out for themselves. Perhaps their revolving doors can contribute to grinding more coffee powder for their guests to be served at the cafes.
Yeah. Otherwise, also you can also use it at the gym as well. But yes, definitely the friction quotient is going to be a little bit difficult. But I think the idea is something that is very inspirational.
Definitely, and you were mentioning on the occasion that you met with Michael Braungart, and that's another topic that I would like to touch on, which is the fact that you had the opportunity to participate and even lead in these many national and international associations, such as the Pacific Asia Travel Association, the PATA, which you have been quite active on, and also the Young Professional Organizations, which is the YPO, etc. And to me, that is very admirable. But I wanted to also touch on the international organizations which play a part in the sustainable and responsible tourism agenda. What is your take on their true impact? Are there too many, or are there concerns in terms of independence and representativeness?
Well, discussing associations, I guess it's a very interesting time right now where the older ones built in the baby boomer eras are now transitioning to millennials and post millennials. And it's not a very easy thing to do. I think for the younger set, especially, they do enjoy something that they can really touch and feel, grassroots type. For the larger companies, larger associations, their reach is greater. They have a lot more resources, but their movement is slower and sometimes not fast enough in evolution for the younger set. PATA is working its way through this and trying to figure out micro volunteering as a solution, and also how to reach out to the community better. I think that each of these associations have a reason for where they are. To answer your question, there aren't enough. But as well as we know with the internet is great because everything is connected and you can find all your information on a search engine. Well, with associations, we are still very fractured. So not only having more, but we also have to learn to work together better.
From the United Nations World Tourism Organizations to the local activists, which organization has impressed or inspired you the most, and which organization do you consider as particularly impactful?
Well, I'm a little biased, so I still would have to say PATA. I'm quite active there and I understand what they're trying to do better. Not to say that the other ones aren't great. It just happens that I know this. And as well, SCOW, and how it's really trying to keep everyone connected. I think not enough can be said that it is a very large world and it's very easy to be disconnected, especially today with COVID. So it's even more important to stay, in contact. Know that the world is much larger than your four walls. We're all in shelter in place, in quarantine, and so forth. And sometimes we forget all the trash that we accumulate and we just throw outside of our apartment. It just disappears. But that's not true. It's just that our concerns are now very, very small. And I think it's important that we stay in contact.
Can you give us like concrete examples as to how PATA had really helped with the sustainable tourism agenda?
Well, for me, I'll start off with one story first about entering PATA. And I got to know the director of communication, Paul Prankarn. We were discussing what needed to be done in tourism. Me coming from Taiwan, I didn't really understand the rest of Southeast Asia that well, except as a customer. And when he told me that the most important thing was clean toilets, it was a shock to my system. Thinking like, oh, I thought it was just maybe English language in all the DMs and also the signage to help the international guests. But actually, it's something very, very basic that in some ways is dirty and we don't want to talk about. If you have clean toilets, everyone will be much more comfortable, and it would also mean that it will be good for the residents as well. And so when we talk about sustainable travel in PATA, it was also about community development and about being concerned about the locals. Too often, large tourism companies will come and succeed in a less developed island or less developed region. And if you don't become concerned about the local situation, it is a very quick way to exploit the land and its beautiful, atmosphere, but not really give back to the local society. And in such a way, then it's not a sustainable business, and it will quickly lose its luster, and also as a destination, it won't be as popular.
And you were talking, so now we are talking about the tourism associations and organizations. What about those like YPO, for example, which are not related to sustainability or responsible tourism? Have you seen the lines move a lot more favorably?
Yes, I have. At YPO, first off, I think the basic values of humility and service, it really builds a very good association. And in terms of projects or in terms of different conversations about sustainability, I was very touched by some business ideas that I would hear and how that they would be working in sustainability.
It's great to hear that organizations worldwide are really committed to it. Doesn't matter whether you're related to tourism or not. I think it's really a great way forward to hear that people are putting sustainability on their minds in terms of their future agenda. But let's move on to the part about leaders instead. Do you think that young leaders are more and more willing to sincerely tackle these crucial topics within their own organizations, or is it not yet the case?
Well, in my experience, it's something that is discussed, but it's very difficult. I'm trying to think about pre-COVID because right now everyone is just suffering and just finding different directions to try to survive. There are some bright spots even in COVID, perhaps I should say. So there's a lot of training, a lot of rethinking. And within this, sustainability is something that does come up. But I think it is not enough for young leaders that are in Asia, I guess, which I am more understanding about. It could be stronger. We do find ourselves being very illustrious and trying to develop our own businesses and focusing on that a lot. And we could do a lot more if we just adjust our mindset a little bit in giving back to our labor force in the job market, especially because in the latest trends today of digitalization, we talk about how the future of work is going to change. And not enough is being put into the training of the workforce for the future.
So Ben, you were mentioning just now about community development, and this is another aspect that I wanted to ask you about because you have been doing a lot of work in terms of the economic and social development through responsible tourism of the communities constituted by the indigenous ethnic groups who are still very present in Taiwan, but which lack the appropriate degree of international and sometimes national recognition. We found that very interesting because not only does it enrich and diversify Taiwan's tourism offering, but it seems like a perfect example of how tourism can reconcile development and sustainability. What do you think about that?
Well, indigenous on one side is very important in that we all do come from the ground, and that's what indigenous means. But in modern society, we start having this new international sense of community, and we forget about our bases. When we talk about travel, we travel to connect with each other. And there are so many different societies, and we tend to drop a few sometimes. In my experience in Taiwan, for example, we do forget about the indigenous culture. And because of that, there is a movement in the last 100 years to try to bring that to the fore. For myself, let me share about how I came into this, okay?
Sure, please.
So there was this Global Insight conference by PATA in New Zealand. I believe it's in about 5 years ago or 7 years ago. And I was the only Taiwanese delegate to go. It was very far. Yet in the conference, they talked about Taiwan 3 times. And it was because of indigenous culture. Just to recapitulate for people that may not know, Taiwan was actually well known as the motherland for the Austronesian and Micronesian, Polynesian people that spread up across the Pacific, all the way from Madagascar, Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, and Guam as well. So this interconnectedness was not just in our modern times. It's important that we not forget about these marginalized cultures. We can learn so much about them. And also at the same time with travel, it enriches the experience. We travel to see different attractions, monuments, but it's really about people. And how can you forget about that side, especially when they are already connected to you? And that's what I learned when I was at the New Zealand Global Insight. Recently, regarding indigenous culture in Taiwan, it's something that I try to also inform in my works as well. In the latest Yamagata Kaku Onsen Hotel I have in Jiaoxi, it was based in the lands of the Kavalan people. Most people in Taiwan don't know much about them except for that the name is used for the Kavalan whiskey. Well, what happened was about 250 years ago, the Kavalan people were moved south about 3 hours by car to closer to Hualien and Taidong. Today, there's only 2 settlements there, and I think there's only about a couple thousand of the Kavalan people left. So what does that have to do with us today? Well, it could just be added color to make a tourism project a little bit more interesting. But I like to think of it as something that could be addressed and understood today. It's not a very happy history. So it's not something that you want to go too deep into if you're talking about hospitality. But I think that it could inform you, just to let you know a little bit more about a different culture, and that we are all connected. Today, we're using the waters that perhaps the Kavalan tribe bathed in or drank 200 some years ago. This is a cycle that we are always continually going through. The water going up into the mountains, evaporating into the sky, and then coming down as rain. These things, it's a circle of life. And when we travel, even if it's just to our backyards, it's something that we should always remember, our connection to the land, going back to the whole idea of what indigenous means. And I think that it's even more important today because we are always so disconnected in our digital worlds. You call it a ditouzu, where you're just always connected and with your head down, looking at your iPhones. So this materiality of being connected to the ground is something that is worth remembering, especially when we go through hospitality or travel, and just remembering that we're in this physical space.
Yeah, and it relates very well to what you were mentioning just yesterday when we were talking about travel, which is the essence of travel. What exactly is about travel? Could you share with the audience like what you were telling me about?
Sure, Jihang. I think about travel, and I think about something that was written about 70 some years ago. By this one famous thinker called Lin Yutang. He has this importance of living and how to not do anything. That was what the book was about. And when he spoke about travel, he spoke about many different types of fake travel. The fake travel of conversation, for example. And this, in some ways, preceded what we talk about in terms of selfies today. So when you travel and you come to this beautiful pavilion and you're drinking tea and you have someone take a picture of you, and you're more concerned about getting the right side of your face for your most beautiful portrait than about the story of why it's important to be there, or even whether the taste of the tea was something to write home about. You probably didn't even drink it. So you're traveling so that you can share all these pictures, you can share these stories, and during dinner or with your friends. Is that the meaning of travel? Just so that you have something to talk about? He would like to say no. Another one was about the fake travel for education. That you're going on these tours, you're going to these beautiful sites, and you're learning the history of maybe some art piece or some museum or famous architecture. And in one day, less than a day, couple hours maybe at best, you suddenly know everything there is to know about this one Italian monument, the story of some famous king, that you now know his life. If you want to talk about PhDs, they spend years just to understand something. So how do you learn true education, he says, in a couple hours? It's a very superficial understanding. So you're not traveling for education.
Yeah, and especially now with the Instagram, the phenomenon, people kind of post themselves as been there, done that, and professional in a certain field. It relates very well to what you were mentioning, and that also kind of puts me into the next question, which is to talk about your personal experience, because I would probably say that you do have a double culture, because you're not just Chinese, you're Taiwanese, but you have also spent a long time in America because of your studies. From a personal and an individual viewpoint, regardless of the passport you may hold, do you reckon that having a double culture is an advantage to embrace fully this experience of travel?
I do think that it does help to be a third culture kid, to have this a view from the outside, let's say. If you're marginalized, if you're someone that is not part of the main society, for example, then you understand the difficulties. And when you travel, you know what it feels like to not be part of that society. And there are other people that may say, well, it could be a little bit difficult, but knowing your situation, you learn to be more tolerant and more accepting of other people. If you're a part of the majority, you take it for granted that life should be a certain way, that everyone has ice water. For example, the common idea of American tourists asking for ice water in Europe and Asia. Today, it doesn't seem that difficult because now everyone is getting very similar in having ice water. But now let's go into other elements of like pop culture maybe. But there are a lot of different ways of experiencing travel. And if you're only going to be at a superficial level of pop culture, you miss out on everything else that is very localized and special about certain areas. The little stories that the grandmas are talking about and how their societies may function a little bit different from yours. You have to be open-minded. You have to be able to accept that other people might have a different way of living. Sometimes it's not comfortable, but that's the essence of travel, that you are trying something that's different. You want to see the real world. And if you are a third culture kid, you're used to this already. And it's much easier for you to really see this side of travel.
So now we're going to go a little bit more on the macro side of things. I mean, putting the COVID-19 pandemic aside, the world has been traveling at significantly greater numbers than before, which also puts greater demand for hotel development. Although it brings jobs and revenue to the community, which could help with, community development, on hindsight, it also obviously creates strains on the environment and the natural resources. So how do you see this ironic relationship from the viewpoint as you are the chairman of the Forte Hotel Group?
Well, to talk about mass tourism, I guess is the question. And being in hotel development, how many more hotels do we want to build? Well, I see from another point of view about how are you going to have people to work in those hotels? The situation in Taiwan is that the flow of labor is not going to be so sustainable. So even if you create these hotels, you don't have anyone to work there. You can import laborers, of course, but that's only one temporary solution. So beyond that, we don't really want to build too many hotels. We already have quite a few between Howard and Forte. That would be about 18 hotels now. For an island, yes, we could continue to grow 25 hotels, 50 hotels. We can go and do hotels outside of Taiwan. But is that really going to be important to our brand value or our family values, for example? Originally, we went into hotels to give jobs to our family members. That was what my grandfather said a long time ago. So when we talk about, well, now it's a great business to go into, minus the COVID situation, and we can do all these hotels very well. Do we want to do more? I would like to say we would like to go with the times, with the market. We have to adjust, but we don't really want to be growing or doubling in size. It's something that I will try to adjust the way we look at things. And I want to take you guys down the direction of virtual. So we have this physical space, which is where I began with architecture. But then with today's technology, we have augmented reality, in which we now start talking about this virtual sense and how that is, well, with COVID becoming even more important. And we also talked a little bit about indigenous culture, about how the physical side of being in a hotel, about being rooted in the land, indigenous culture as a kind of a juxtaposition with the virtual or digital world. I don't really find myself liking the digital very much. And this led me to the 2017 WCIT event where I did a PATA Smart and Sustainable Tourism Symposium. We wanted to explore a little bit about smart cities, a little bit more about gamification, augmented reality, and as well about productive tourism, in which a tourist could be a larger impact on the local culture and the local communities.
Yeah, thank you for touching on the WCIT because I know that that was a huge project for you when you wanted to take it up, and that was also kind of a serendipitous moment that you decided to organize this event. So could you share what motivated you to organize this event and what are the expectations that you wanted out from organizing this event?
Well, first of all, it was when I was starting to be a lot more active in PATA. But when the WCIT was going to be held in Taiwan, it was a great chance. And I tried to think about what was a way I can give back to my society. Tourism and technology. Technology wasn't something that I was very comfortable with, but it was something I wanted to explore because I knew that it was the next direction that we are all going to go further into. As I was saying, the gamified world and also how you approach the world through the more digital sense. I was worried about the next generation, that we will be a little bit too much into being a gamer that's stuck in a room and how that was going to affect your physical relationships. That was also to remind you the time of Pokemon Go. It came out and all these gamers started coming out and traveling just so that they could capture these little monsters. It was a great direction to go. I was inspired by that and saying, well, maybe there is a positive side. Maybe I have to get comfortable about this myself. And with tourism, you will have to adjust. And like we were just talking about the difficulty of mass tourism, Smart Cities was also talking about how do you control mass tourism when you have like an overbalance of too many people in certain sectors, say at certain museums, and then you could direct them to another museum which had shorter lines. So on an operational level, that was very helpful in spreading the wealth, spreading the people, the flow of things, and using technology to do that. It was about being more efficient, I guess you could say, right? Now, also, I like to say with the digital side or the virtual side, maybe we don't need to travel out as much as well. So there are very many more different types of tourism that will be coming up onto the market. I think today, because we can't travel that much, a lot of these virtual trips are going to become much more important. But also, when you do go travel, you want to go further, deeper in understanding. So how that information is going to reach you and how much time you spend in a place, and also how you value your trip more, because now it's rare to go travel. That's going to also be another solution, I hope, to mass tourism. It's great that we cannot move as a mass all over the world now. So the world, in a way, can kind of revert to before all this mass tourism. And we can see what is another alternative, and we can make a better decision about that. And I think technology definitely can be a very good enabler to help that.
Thank you. So you confirm that tourism technology is one of the main solutions for a more sustainable travel in the future, right?
Yes, it's something I agree very much.
And so, what are some of the things that you have done to better meet these sustainability standards? What are some of the projects that you have been working on?
Well, Jihung, I guess I would start off first with the virtual Matsuri that I'm working on. It's a special Yamagata festival that's happening very soon in August. Because of the COVID situation, so we have to take this online. It will have some live stream, some videos introducing tourism and sports, in this case, about mountain climbing and how Yamagata, the prefecture in Japan, and the mountains in Yilan, part of Taiwan, could be closer. We could have an exchange of ideas and also promote each other and also share our experiences because we cannot travel right now. That's something that I'm practicing and learning about how you do so um, without any air travel. Another thing that I'm doing that's also tied into this is I'm doing a food truck, but it's not really just the food. It still is because during COVID, it seems even more important about having this food being delivered to you. We cannot go into restaurants. We cannot sit down and dine anymore. We don't have a waiter come to you. So how do you do service or hospitality when it's no touch? So that in the food truck is being explored. We're going to have live streaming there as well. We have to learn from our experience during COVID of all these Zoom meetings, all the preparation work that goes for it in it, the different types of etiquette. So can we do this? I don't know, but in this new no-touch food hospitality, can we create this journey for you about the food through live streaming? You will get the food from the food truck, but there's a live stream connection to the chef inside the truck. But then there's also the videos elsewhere on its travels. The food truck is going to go around Taiwan and showcase different vegetables and different produce from different places. In a way, bring that travel story to you in the food that you receive at the food truck.
Yeah, I love that idea. It's basically, working with our current circumstances and to make the best out of it. That's exactly what this is about. You were also mentioning about this Velo Dash project, right? Could you tell us more about the Velo Dash project?
So Villadash actually came about from the 2017 WCIT. The year after that, I became involved with this bicycle app that uses GPS. It started out as a way to stay connected to your bicycling friends when you go on a trip. Everyone goes at different speeds. Someone might be arriving at the destination much earlier than you. And maybe someone else fell or had a flat tire and you had to go back and find them. So this app would help you with this. Now, you can look at it as just a GPS, just staying in contact, or for event organizers with thousands of cyclists and how to keep track of them. But then there's also another side about the social side, we like to say. You can meet new people. You can find contacts. Some people will be of similar interests. You have profiles, learning from social media, and how do you almost like dating, right? It's not something we like to say too much, but it's like, is it Tinder for cyclists? It's an easy way to understand. But in this way, it goes back to travel has always had that sexy side, that you go travel and you meet new friends, you meet new boyfriends and girlfriends. It's something that any 20-year-old will understand very well.
Well, that's what travel has always been, right? To meet new people, and unfortunately, we can't do that right now. But back to your story, it seems like you have everything packed for the rest of 2021, huh? So, are there anything else that is next for you?
Anything else that's next for me? Well, I really hope to look deeper into the next travels I can do. I'm hoping to go to Yamagata and perhaps staying for a while and try out the new workcation projects they have, especially with Japan Rail East.
Nice. So now we have reached towards the end of this interview. Something that you have inspired me is that you have really worked your way up each step in your career. You have stayed true. You have stayed humble despite being a leader in your industry. And we know for a fact that the persistent impact of the pandemic has seen a significant outflow of talents from the tourism industry. So, as an industry veteran, what advice do you have for those who are still fighting through? What would you say to encourage them to forge through these difficult times ahead?
I think the most important thing to really look at is to be able to make mistakes. No one knows the answer to the future. No one knows when COVID is going to lessen its impact on tourism. And from my experience, although it was a great time just going back and sharing my experience in travel with you, Jihang, um, while it was happening, they were all mistakes. They were all accidents. The planning wasn't very good. But I find myself in a very good situation right now, learning from all of them and gaining a different perspective. Even now, just say, for example, the very simple chore of finding people for my food truck. Uh, I did not look for someone who can cook. Instead, I actually went to look at KOLs or YouTubers and asked if they wanted to cook. So it was just looking at a more open-minded way of finding people. We're talking about the outflow of people, but another way to look at it is that they're just going to different industries, and maybe there is a convergence that's happening. We will no longer be really looking at, say, for example, truck drivers. Now they will be drone drivers or something in which they will use their abilities. Now, KOLs, they have been promoting food. So why can't they cook as well? And it's actually something they are doing during the lockdown. Everyone's sharing their best baked goods or the new salad they created at home or spaghetti and whatnot. So why don't you take that a little further and make that another decision that you become a full-time F&B worker, but with the ability to do live stream?
Oh, thank you very much. I'm sure this has given a lot of positivity to forge through this difficult time ahead.
Yeah, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just keep on going.
That makes a perfect ending to our podcast. Thank you very much, Ben, for sitting with us today to talk about your experience.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you, Jihan.